Happy Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. I'm back again. We're doing back-to-back videos because we've got so much going on in the weather world. Of course, we all know about our little buddy Ernesto. There he is, tropical storm as I'm filming this. It's just about to be a hurricane, though. By the time you're watching this, it's probably Hurricane Ernesto. We're going to talk more about that right here in a moment, but we got some big-time thunder boomers to talk about here in the mainland U.S. today. We've got a 5% risk of tornadoes in Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas. That slight risk of severe weather there is driven by a hail threat. I think we're going to have some pretty big hail, but the tornado risk is there as well. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. And if you live in Kansas City, all the way down there to Overland Park, you should be, watching the skies today. Tomorrow, August 15th, the threat moves east. And now we've got 20 million people under the gun for wind, hail, and maybe an isolated tornado or two. I think hail is going to be probably the biggest problem in wind. Tornado threat doesn't look that crazy, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to be dealing with this, and the timing of it's actually pretty interesting. I'm going to show you that right here in a moment, but first, all the way out there on the day 3 outlook, we've got 36 million people under a marginal risk of severe weather as the threat continues to move east from Michigan and Canada, Ohio, Kentucky, all the way down through Tennessee and into the deep south. We're going to have a pretty large area of, some isolated severe weather, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. Here's what the radar could look like as we go into the future. Starting off around 3 p.m. today, we've got some scattered stuff. It don't look like much nothing, but then boom, late tonight, okay, about 11 p.m. Eastern or so, we're going to start to see some big time thunder boomers popping up in Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri. Right in here, this is where I expect the strongest storms to be, and this is where we have that highest tornado threat. It's not a high tornado threat, but it's, out of everything we've got to work with, it's the highest. This is very quickly going to organize into a multi-cluster, maybe a mesoscale convective system that is bringing lots of wind into eastern portions of Iowa, up there towards Wisconsin maybe, and then of course down into central Missouri as well. But look at the time here. This is 3 a.m. So the severe weather threat for Illinois down even towards St. Louis is actually going to start early in the morning between 3 a.m. and 9 a.m. The storms are going to get into the Chicago area around that time as well. And as we go even farther into the future, we are going to see new storms spark up in the afternoon and evening hours on Thursday. But that initial push in the morning and the early a.m. hours tomorrow might be the strongest storms that a lot of us see in the slight risk area tomorrow. Now, that could change. These models don't do very good in the summer, given the isolated and pop-up nature of the storms, but that's a pretty good take on what could happen. Then, of course, as we go into Friday, new storms are reforming down here in Illinois, Indiana, down into Kentucky, and we're going to have another damaging wind threat maybe around the Paducah area. Going back out here to Ernesto, still causing significant problems in Puerto Rico, some tropical storm force winds and lots of flooding, mudslides, landslides, that kind of stuff. This is the kind of storm system that causes those sorts of problems, and it's been doing that. The good news is the worst of it is done now, and it's going to be moving out to sea. It might impact the Bahamas a little bit, but we're mostly talking about if you're in the Bahamas, if you're in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, even all the way up there along the northeastern coast of the United States. The biggest impacts I think that we're going to see from Ernesto is going to be some waves, and really not even large waves. We're talking about the sneaky ones, the rip currents. The farther north you go, we actually might see some problems with beach erosion. The waves will be a little bit bigger, but yeah, the swells are going to reach the coast towards the end of this week and into the weekend. Larger problems with precipitation and wind maybe in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, but as you can see here, all the spaghetti models now show this thing recurving hard out to sea, and for the most part outside of Bermuda, of course, this is going to be a fish storm. Here's the official update and track from the National Hurricane Center. Right now we're at 70 miles per hour with the wind speed, so literally the next update, this is going to be a hurricane. We'll be calling it Hurricane Ernesto by the time you're watching this video. It's moving at northwest at 16 miles per hour, and once again, right before it gets to Bermuda over there, it's expected to become a major Category 3 hurricane, and it's at this time where we might see the biggest waves. It'll take those swells a while to reach the eastern coast of the United States, but it is going to cause some slight problems on the beaches across the eastern United States. It's kind of crazy that it's still going to be a Category 1 way up here at the same parallel well as Cape Cod. Okay, so this might be a hurricane or at least a tropical storm. If it makes landfall in Nova Scotia, it might be a pretty impactful storm up there. We're a little bit too far out to talk too much about that right now, though. Key messages for tropical storm and soon to be Hurricane Ernesto are tropical storm conditions are going to continue in the Puerto Rico area for a little while. Heavy rain is going to lead to flooding. We're likely going to see some impacts in Bermuda late this week, and swells generated by Ernesto are expected to affect portions of the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and the Bahamas during the next few days, and then reach the east coast of the United States and Bermuda late this week and into the weekend. So if you got any beach plans, just know it's going to be a little choppier than usual. Looking even farther into the future, there's Ernesto way out there. Once again, the Euro model showing it curve out to sea. No problems whatsoever. Something that is going to happen, though, is we're going to see a big extension of our trough in the east, and this is going to send a lot of cool air down into the Ohio Valley. It's going to cause things to get even hotter in Arizona and Texas and, a lot of the southwestern United States. And this omega block pattern is thankfully what's going to keep Ernesto away from us, but it's also going to, amplify the heat wave that's going on over here in the plains over towards the Four Corners region. That is going to stick around for a while. In fact, the ridge is really going to get quite intense, especially as we get into early next week. So no relief whatsoever for Texas. And places over here that have been experiencing this heat. Unfortunately for you guys, I have no good news for you there. It is going to be a little bit cooler over here in the east, though, as we go into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. And the pattern, it's not going to change. Like, this is the way the weather's going to be for the next week or so, it looks like. Climate Prediction Center tends to agree. Hotter than heck. Once again, down here in Arizona and Texas. Cooler in California, cooler in the Ohio Valley, upper Midwest, Great Lakes region. We've been talking about this. We've known that this is coming. I'm just reminding you. Also, over the next week or so, this is where we expect to see the heaviest rain. Most of the rain's going to fall at the top of that roller coaster. Once again, in a situation where we have a big ridge in the center of the U.S. like this, a good way to think about it, as far as like who's going to get storms and rain, is wherever that ridge sets up, think of it like a roller coaster. And then imagine you're on that roller coaster. Like, what's the most fun part, right? It's this part when you go down. Well, that's also the most fun part for storms. And that's where they decide to dump all their rain. So that's what's happening over here. And we're going to see recurring flash flooding events and isolated severe weather events like we're dealing with today and tomorrow as a result of this pattern, at least for the next week. Wanted to show you something else pretty cool that we've been working on. You guys don't have access to this yet, but pretty soon you'll be able to go to a website or an app and see the probability of whether or not we're going to go live that day. I know a lot of people are, anytime there's a severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch, it's not clear exactly when we decide to go live. We've really defined the criteria for that, and we're making it public. So, if you ever wonder, like, I wonder if Ryan's going to go live today, you'll be able to go to this and see a percentage probability of how likely it is we're going live based off of, what the current forecast is and what our criteria is. So, for example, tomorrow, because, there's such a large area being affected by potential winds and hail and tornadoes, there's a 45% probability that we'll flip the live stream on. It probably won't happen, but we also we'll probably do a video. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments, and we'll work really hard to get this available to you. And that's all the weather talk I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will likely see you tomorrow or the next day. I'm not 100% sure yet, but stay tuned, subscribe, turn notifications on, and all that stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Ooh.